He sits alone, the emperor, the philosopher, the man who ruled the known world. Marcus Aurelius, wrapped not in gold or glory, but in thought. The wars beyond his walls are nothing compared to the war within. You have power over your mind and not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Yet, even the strongest minds forget their own worth. Every age, every generation, fights the same invisible battle, not for land, not for power, but for self-value. We trade our peace for approval. We measure our worth by numbers, titles, or faces that glance our way. And without noticing, we begin to shrink. We accept less than we deserve, not because the world demands it, but because we've forgotten what we are worth. In the ancient world, warriors were not forged by comfort. They were forged by recognition of their purpose, of their nature. The Stoics called it living according to virtue, to act in harmony with one's higher self. Marcus Aurelius understood this. Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one. He knew that self-worth is not inherited, it is remembered. When you undervalue yourself, you do not merely lower your standards, you surrender your sovereignty. You hand the keys of your peace to others and beg them to tell you who you are. Stoicism rejects that slavery. To accept less than you deserve is to forget that choice. It's to bow to circumstances instead of standing with character. We suffer more often in imagination than in reality. The mind invents prisons where none exist. You convince yourself that you must stay where you are, in the wrong job, in the wrong relationship, in the wrong version of yourself, because leaving feels dangerous. But the truth is, the danger lies in staying. Every day you accept less than your worth, a part of your spirit forgets how to stand tall. You silence your voice. You dull your edge. You start mistaking comfort for peace and fear for humility. Marcus once wrote that the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. So ask yourself, what color have you painted your soul with? Doubt, fear, the pale shades of surrender, or the vivid tones of courage, clarity, and worth? To remember your worth is to reclaim command of your mind. It is to say, I will not be defined by how the world treats me, but by how I treat myself. Epictetus, born a slave, understood this better than any emperor. He said he had no wealth, no rank, no throne. Yet he walked freer than kings, because he ruled his own perception. That is the first law of freedom. To value yourself is not arrogance, it is alignment. It is the realization that your worth was never in question. Only your awareness of it was. To live as a shadow of your potential, or as the embodiment of it. To let the world define you, or to define yourself by virtue. The Stoics remind us that courage is not found in grand gestures, but in the quiet decision to rise each day and act with integrity, even when no one sees. So when the world tempts you to settle, when doubt whispers that you are not enough, look well into yourself. There is a source of strength which will always spring up if you will always look. You are not defined by what you earn or what you own. You are defined by what you endure, what you build, and what you become. Every act of courage, every honest thought, every moment of restraint, these are your treasures. They are proof of your worth. You are not empty. You are not behind. You are not lesser. You are simply waiting to remember the truth, that you were never ordinary, only unaware of your own light. The greatest war ever fought was not on the battlefield, but within the mind of man. And the first victory is remembering your worth every morning. Marcus Aurelius faced a battle not with enemies, but with illusions. He understood what few truly grasp, that the greatest thief of peace is comparison. It is not the man who has too little, Seneca said, but the man who craves more who is poor. Comparison is the silent poison of the soul. It begins softly, a glance, a thought, a whisper. You see another's success, another's beauty, another's recognition, and somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice says, "You are not enough." That voice is the enemy of your freedom. In ancient Rome, statues of heroes lined the streets, each face carved in stone, each story told in triumph. But Marcus knew that every one of those men, for all their glory, carried their own doubts and fears. Every comparison was a mirage, a reflection of insecurity dressed as ambition. Today our marble statues are screens. Our amphitheater is digital. We scroll through the highlight reels of other people's lives and measure our worth in pixels and likes. We forget that we are comparing our raw, unfiltered humanity to someone else's polished illusion. The Stoics would call this a waste of life. He meant, stop performing. Stop living for applause. The man who seeks validation from others is like a slave begging his master for freedom. Freedom cannot be given by the crowd. It must be claimed within. Ambition means tying your well-being to what others say or do. Sanity means tying it to your own actions. He knew that the opinions of others were unstable currency, always changing, always fickle. And yet, how often do we sell our peace for it? How often do we measure our value by the approval of strangers? Comparison shackles you to an endless race, one you can never win because the finish line keeps moving. There will always be someone with more wealth, more beauty, more recognition. But what they cannot have, what no one can take, is your virtue, your character, your path. The Stoics believed that the purpose of life was not competition, but alignment. To live in harmony with your nature, to cultivate wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, regardless of what others do or think. When you act according to virtue, you are unchained. When you define success as living truthfully, no one can make you small. To imitate others blindly is to abandon the path your soul was meant to walk. You were not born to be a shadow. You were born to be light. The cure for comparison is gratitude. It is looking at your own life, your breath, your effort, your lessons, and saying, this is enough. I am enough. Not because you are perfect, but because you are becoming. Stoicism teaches us to focus on what is within our control, and comparison never is. The thoughts of others, the luck of others, the timing of others, none belong to you. But your response does. Your effort does. Your discipline does. He does not envy the wealthy merchant, nor the celebrated general, nor the poet adored by the masses. He knows that each carries his own unseen burden. He knows that envy is blindness. It sees only the surface, never the struggle beneath. Remember, Marcus wrote, how long you have been putting off these things, and how often you have received an opportunity from the gods. That is the ultimate freedom, realizing that your time is too precious to waste on comparison. You are a moment of consciousness in an infinite universe. Why spend it wishing to be someone else? Your worth was never meant to be weighed on the scales of others. It was meant to be discovered in the quiet of your own mind, in your discipline, your kindness, your consistency, your courage. Comparison is noise. Virtue is truth. Do not measure your value by the echoes of the crowd. Measure it by the calm in your soul when you act with integrity. What others have may fade, but the man who knows his worth carries an empire within. Self-neglect is not always obvious. It does not come in a flash of recklessness, but in small, quiet decisions. It is not the absence of action, but the absence of balance. It is the sacrifice of oneself on the altar of duty, love, or expectation, until nothing remains. Marcus Aurelius understood this deeply. As emperor, he bore the weight of an empire, but he also understood the delicate balance between giving and preserving. You are a part of the whole. Do not neglect the whole for the sake of your own desire. But he did not mean for us to abandon ourselves. He meant for us to integrate, to care for our own well-being, so that we could serve the greater whole. Stoicism teaches us that you cannot pour from an empty cup. In seeking to serve others, to give everything for the good of those around you, you risk losing yourself. Your energy fades. Your clarity dulls. Your strength is sapped by demands you fail to set boundaries for. Self-neglect is a quiet form of surrender. It is the belief that our value lies only in what we give, and not in what we preserve. We forget that we must first be strong within ourselves to bring strength to others. No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself. But in this statement, Seneca was not talking about enduring every hardship without rest. He was not talking about constant battle, constant sacrifice, constant depletion. What he meant was that we are not truly tested until we face the challenge of caring for ourselves. And yet this is often the first thing we abandon. We believe that self-care is indulgence, that pausing for rest is weakness. But the Stoics understood this truth. Without rest, there can be no recovery. Without self-care, there is no strength. The same wisdom Marcus Aurelius used to lead the Roman Empire. The same wisdom that helped him face wars, betrayals, and inner turmoil is the same wisdom that tells you, you must tend to yourself as much as you tend to others. To neglect your own health, your own soul, is to abandon your own capacity for good. You are not a machine. You are a man, a woman, a human being. In the Stoic view, there is no virtue in perpetual self-sacrifice if it leads to burnout. Strength comes not from depletion, but from a harmony between inner peace and outward action. He who is not a good servant of his own soul cannot be a good servant of the world. In your own life, what have you neglected? Have you left your health, your mind, your spirit unguarded? Have you denied yourself peace for the sake of others? You are a part of the whole. If you are to be a servant to the world, you must first serve yourself. You must prioritize your well-being so that when the call to action comes, you are ready. To be strong is to be whole. To be virtuous is to act with clarity and strength. But without care, those virtues become hollow, and you are left empty. Remember, the Stoics did not demand perfection. They demanded balance. They demanded you stand strong, but also pause when needed. To retreat and restore is not a sign of weakness, but of wisdom. To tend to your own well-being is not indulgence, but the foundation of all other service. Do not give away everything to the world, only to return to an empty shell. To be a man of virtue, you must first be a man of self-care. The world will demand your strength, but you must keep the reserve of your soul. Every man fights a war no one else can see. Not the war of nations, but the war of the mind, the unseen struggle between fear and freedom. Marcus Aurelius understood this better than most. He ruled an empire larger than any before him, yet his greatest conquest was not of land or armies, it was of himself. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. We think of freedom as something outside of us, wealth, status, success, or escape. But the Stoics remind us, true freedom is inward. It is the ability to stand firm when your mind trembles, to make choices not ruled by fear, to act by reason, not reaction. Yet most of us live imprisoned by the opinions of others, by fear of failure, by the walls of our own hesitation. Every decision he made carried the weight of thousands of lives. But he knew that indecision was its own form of death, a slow surrender of will. And so he wrote, "If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it." The Stoic way is simple, but never easy. It is to act without fear, guided only by what is right. It is to trust the reason within you more than the noise around you. Fear, doubt, hesitation, they disguise themselves as protection. But readiness never comes. Courage, the Stoics teach, is not the absence of fear, but the decision to move through it. And we suffer more from imagination than from reality. How many dreams have died in that space between hesitation and action? How many lives have been lived in quiet captivity, safe, comfortable, but never truly free? Freedom begins when you stop waiting for permission. It begins when you stop believing that fear is a signal to stop and start seeing it as a signal to begin. Epictetus, who was born a slave, found his freedom not by changing his condition, but by changing his mind. He said, "That is the battle for inner freedom, to master what cannot be taken from you. Your thoughts, your choices, your will." In a world filled with noise, the Stoic learns to listen inward. In a life filled with uncertainty, the Stoic learns to act with clarity. And in the face of fear, the Stoic learns to smile. For he knows that every trial is a teacher, every hardship an invitation to rise. Marcus Aurelius wrote during plague, during war, during betrayal, and yet he remained calm. Not because he was immune to pain, but because he learned to separate what he could control from what he could not. That is the secret. Freedom is not found in changing your fate. It is found in accepting it and still choosing to live well. This is amor fati, the love of fate. To love not only the good moments, but the difficult ones too. To see every obstacle as part of your story, not a curse upon it. When you embrace this truth, fear loses its grip. You no longer fight the world. You move with it, guided by reason, steadied by virtue. He turns to his men and says quietly, and with that, he walks forward, into battle, into chaos, into life itself, free not because the world is calm, but because his mind is. The chains that bind you are not made of iron, but of thought. Break them, act with courage, for no man is free until he conquers his own mind. The emperor stands alone by the open window. His armor rests beside him, dented, scarred, but shining in the golden light. He breathes deeply, eyes calm, a faint smile touching his face. He has fought the war within, endured the storms of doubt, walked through the chains of comparison and the weight of self-neglect. And now, there is peace, not the peace of idleness, but the peace of virtue. If it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. Marcus Aurelius Virtue. The Stoics called it the only true good. Everything else, wealth, fame, success, was secondary, because nothing external could ever make a man free. Only character could. This is the return to virtue, the homecoming of the soul that has wandered too far from itself. In this chapter of life, the Stoic realizes that self-worth was never something to be earned. It was something to be remembered. You do not become worthy by comparison, by approval, or by success. You are worthy because you are capable of reason, of courage, of choice, because you possess the same inner flame that burned within philosophers, poets, and emperors. Seneca once wrote, "The good man is invincible, for he does not engage in what he cannot conquer." He meant that the man who lives by virtue cannot be defeated because his victories are within. He cannot lose his honesty. He cannot lose his integrity. He cannot lose his peace, because those things are his nature, not his possessions. The modern soul has forgotten this. We chase happiness like a shadow that always moves just out of reach. We call it success, validation, status. But the Stoics knew happiness is not something you pursue. It is the natural state of a soul aligned with truth. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the right to live as we wish." And he added, "No man is free who is not master of himself. To live freely, you must live virtuously. To act with wisdom when the world is loud. To respond with temperance when provoked. To choose justice when temptation calls. To hold courage when the easy path glitters before you. These are the daily victories, unseen, that make a man great. That life's purpose is not grand conquest, but humble presence. To serve without pride. To live without excess. To love without need." For years, Marcus Aurelius ruled the empire not by domination, but by restraint, the hardest form of strength. He wrote not as a ruler speaking to others, but as a man reminding himself of the path back to peace. Virtue is not ancient. It is not lost to time. It lives wherever a human being chooses clarity over confusion, discipline over chaos, kindness over cruelty. That the path to fulfillment is not to seek what lies beyond, but to perfect what lies within. When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is and to be alive, to breathe, to think, to love. He pauses, smiles faintly, and sets down the quill. His work for the day has already begun, not in conquest, but in being. Virtue is not perfection. It is alignment. It is the act of returning again and again to what is good, what is true, what is yours. You were never unworthy. You were only asleep to your own greatness. Awaken. The empire of your soul awaits.